Hi, blessings in Jesus' name. So this morning, first of all, as I've said, I had to end all communications with Wexford County Council because it was taking a toll on me, going up and down, and not really having any resolution. So, obviously now I can't return to work. I've diagnosed hip injury, and I've had to inform work. Now I will also have to inform the social welfare today of the situation. So I'm on the street. My physical condition is worsening. The coldest weather of the season is ahead of us. Somebody called me yesterday with a room, which is quite unusual. They would actually call you. Usually you have to call them. They called me with a room, a single room, €480, all bills included. Would be brilliant for me. It would be very suitable, but I still can't afford it. It's unreachable for me. It would leave me with €45 or €60 after January with the increase, which just isn't enough for me to live off given what I have to purchase. I'd have to purchase three or 4 7.5 kilogram bags of potatoes. I'd have to get my vitamin B12. I'd have to purchase that. And certain vitamins you can't get when you're not eating meat. You have to purchase them. So that's an additional cost because certain vitamins have to be bought to stay healthy when you're not eating meat. B12 is one of them. Potassium iodide is another, or iodine is another. So there are certain dietary requirements that I now have that wouldn't be facilitated by staying in the likes of Osnum House. Fruits and roots are what I predominantly eat. They're not very cheap to buy. So €60 wouldn't cover me. Wouldn't cover me food, clothing, necessary detergents, and just usual household stuffs and miscellaneous. Hey, yeah, good morning. So it wouldn't work financially. Even if I did get the help from the social welfare with the deposit and the first month's rent up front, I still wouldn't be in a position to continue in that accommodation. So whilst it's probably one of the best deals that are available on the market at the moment, 480 all bills included for a single room, I couldn't afford it. That's how poor my situation is. That's how under the living, far under the poverty line I currently am. Even though this local municipality are aware of my situation and have been for years now, many years, that I haven't been in a position to acquire my own accommodation and afford it without their assistance. So I struggled in 72 King Street until it just got unmanageable. I was going without food most weeks, sometimes up to three days. I had the same clothes for over a year, maybe even 2 years, the same jacket, and it's just gotten to the point where it was worthy of the bin. And so the situation I'm in now, I can't really go on. It shouldn't go on anyway. I mean, with all the provisions they claim are in place in terms of housing and stuff like that, there should be something made available to me, especially given my dietary, the special needs in my diet. So, the situation can only really get worse unless someone intervenes, because I'm not physically capable of improving my own situation by working. And even when I was working, I earned maybe less than 400, maybe 377 a week after tax, and it wasn't enough money to get me off the streets. So either way, whether working or not, I would need the assistance of the government to help me to get into an accommodation, and that's wrong. Because somebody should, who's earning, within a number of weeks, be able to get themselves off the street. And I wasn't in that position. I knew I would have had to save for potentially at least 10 weeks. Sure, you'd be the other side of winter. Before I'd be in a position to afford even the least expensive shared house, in the single room, in the smallest room in the house. It would be 10 weeks before I'd be able to afford it working. That's wrong. So that's how far off the living wage we are with our minimum wage in Ireland. So I've contacted not Wexford County Council directly, but I do endeavour to contact Tom Enright, who is above Wexford County Council. He's above it, so I've never engaged with Tom Enright before. I hope to engage with Tom Enright and tell him the situation, how I've been treated, and why I wrote the letter for them not to contact me anymore, because they had really become a disruption and weren't treating me fairly or even logically at some points throughout our engagements. And so it felt like, banging your head off the wall, which it's not good for anybody's psychology. It's not good for your physical health. It's not good the way they treat us when we need their help, and it can't be allowed to continue. What I've done this morning is I've contacted many different councillors in Wexford and in other counties, the housing initiatives in Wexford and in other counties, and I intend to make everything that I'm doing transparent on my Facebook and in my videos. I've contacted the Mayor of Wexford, Mrs. Bell, and so I've contacted many different councillors in Wexford Town. Hopefully some of them can do something for me. I don't know what else I can do. I tried to engage the council, and all they kept doing was trying to send me to Osnam House, Wexford, when I told them it's full of drug use. I'm an ex-drug user. I'm trying to stay away from drugs, and that I couldn't afford to pay the €80 and cater for myself with special dietary requirements. I wouldn't have the necessary cooking facilities in the hostel. It wasn't solving my problems and my situation. It wasn't catering for them, and I made them aware of this. And I know that in citizens' information it tells us that they have to treat people with special needs differently, and they have to prioritise them. Like if somebody's homeless, usually they're prioritised. If somebody's homeless with medical needs, they'd be prioritised even more. So special dietary needs are medical needs, because if you don't have those special dietary requirements met, you can get sick quite quickly. And so that has been seen with me. I've been sick for a while now. Not sick like I don't have terminal illness or anything, but because once your bowel is unhappy and inflamed, you might have malabsorption syndrome. I'm losing weight. I have the signs of malabsorption. Though my blood count is fine, it doesn't have to be bad for you to be unwell or for you to be relatively malnourished. So I wouldn't say I'm in fatal danger or anything, but if I was left, I would just continue to get weaker potentially, and I need that security of a place to live so I can get strong enough and recover my injuries, and so I can get back and fit for work. If I'm left on the street in this condition, the likelihood is I will deteriorate, and that's what has been seen and observed and reported to the medical local medical practitioners. I'm exempt from wearing a mask. I will attempt again to engage my doctor to get a full assessment, because I'm 40 now. I should really have a full count, a full medical test done. You should when you're 40. Just make sure everything's working right, your heart, your lungs, your blood, your body, your digestion, everything. Just make sure everything's working right, your liver, your organs, have everything tested. Given that I'm having dietary problems, really the spectrum of bacteria should be tested in my system as well. So there are certain tests that should be done, knowing what they know and knowing what I've told them, that haven't been to date, and so they should be. And these tests are readily available to your GP. You should be easily able to do a full medical assessment of a 40-year-old with a medical card. There's no imposition or impasse there for him. So my doctor's Paul Curran at the Fife, so any encounters I have had with him have been amicable, and I find him quite an attentive doctor, but I'll need to see him, and I'm exempt from mask wearing, so that needs to be made clear to people. Some of us are exempt now, and I'm exempt for a number of reasons. I don't agree that they work. I don't believe that they work. But apart from that, there are physiological changes to my sinus. I have a history of asthma. I have a deviated septum. It's not a good idea for me to be wearing a mask. Say, just wear it. Then it's just a show. You're just wearing it for 2 minutes. It's just a show. I'm not going to put on a show for you. I'm not your performing monkey. So, no. I'm exempt from wearing them. I don't agree with them in the first place. I don't think there's enough scientifically substantiated evidence that masks help in any way. I think it's a show. So they can't do their job properly and continue to deny me access. They can't. They can't do both. So I've contacted many counsellors all around the country who are involved in housing and in the housing department. I've contacted Focus Ireland, who I know have housed a man in Wexford, and are dealing directly with him, and he has a worker from them who engages with him on a regular basis. He has an apartment, and he was also homeless for a number of years, and Focus Ireland gave him an apartment. Now, Focus Ireland I've contacted, and they've told me I have to go to the county council. But I have information from other people that says I don't. That Focus Ireland are actually supplying them with the apartment. They went and got it for them. So they're not giving me upfront information. They're not being honest with me, forthcoming, about all the ways they can and will and should help a person in my situation. They're not. They're just trying to appear to have the upper hand and the higher moral ground. But they can't. How can you leave a man in my situation and have the higher moral ground? They can't save face on this. So I've contacted the mayor, the ex-mayor, many councillors around Wexford. I've contacted Councillor Codd, Councillor Bell, Councillor Lawler, many around from different parties: Sinn Féin, Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, Labour Party, non-party members. I've contacted councillors from every different party. I've tried to contact Tom Enright. I haven't been able to yet. He's over Wexford County Council. I'm trying to get his direct contact to his office. He's the only one I'll deal with up there going forward. I've no prior dealings with him, but I've prior dealings with other staff members who haven't treated me fairly or reasonably. Telling me one thing, doing another. Saying, we're okay now, and then when you go in, telling you're off the housing list. So you can't function that way. Nobody can be expected to function that way or engage them on that level. Telling you, we won't help you at the address you're at with housing assistance payment because you don't have a traditional lease agreement, but in order to stay on the housing list, you have to give us proof of address. For what purpose? Proof of address? I'm paying €90 all-inclusive. Now, it's gone up to 120 all-inclusive for the entry-level property. I'm still on the same amount of money, still paying the same amount of maintenance to my child. but they expect that I could survive on even less money now. Of course I need housing assistance payment. I can't get an accommodation without housing assistance payment, like anybody else can't be expected to get an accommodation without housing assistance payment. Yet they were expecting me to pay rent without a housing assistance payment, simply because there wasn't a piece of paper, even though the agreement I had was lawful. Now that's hardly doing everything in your power to help somebody in their situation, is it? Where you would leave them, knowing they've only got €205 a week at the time I had, and leave them in that situation, struggling, going without food, going without necessary clothing or proper clothing for the season, footwear, etc., knowing that I only had social welfare to try and do all of that. They knew that I was paying maintenance to my daughter. They knew that I was paying €90 a week. They did a full means test on me. Yet they elected that the best thing to do was take me off the housing list. Even only because they asked me for proof of address. When that proof of address wouldn't have aided me in getting HAP, why did they require it? And they mailed me to that address asking for proof of it, that I was at it. Then they took me off the housing list on the basis that I didn't get back to them in a timely fashion. How could they have made that decision that I was just neglecting to get back to them if they didn't have clear information that that was the address I was at? Do you understand what I'm saying? In other words, if they weren't sure that I was at that address, how could they then make the decision to take me off the housing list on the basis that they didn't manage to contact me at that address when they didn't ring my phone or email me despite having both those other forms of contact? That's not reasonable thinking. That's not logical. We don't have confirmation that you're at that address, but we'll mail you at that address. We won't phone call you or email you, even though we know that they are definite contacts. They're definite ways to get you. But on the basis that we've mailed you to where we are now requiring proof of address, sent you post, we're now going to take you off the housing list in the absence of attempting to contact you by the other means, email or phone. What kind of fool do they take me for? Are they really allowed to behave that way and expect people to keep walking up the hill to them with their rucksack on their back? That's abuse. That's abuse. That's illogical behaviour. It's so illogical that one can only come to the conclusion that they were doing it to hinder and annoy me, and to vex me, and to disrupt my life and my psychology. But it's a psychological warfare tactic. So I got to the point where I was like, I can't continue doing this. It's not good for anybody's health. So I said, I'm not going to communicate with this office again. Now I would communicate with the head over that office. If he said, I can assure you that you'll be treated fairly when you re-engage this facility. That would be the only reason I would change my mind. Is if I had an assurance that when I actually go into that office, I'll be treated like fairly reasonably according to the aids and services that they are obligated to afford every citizen. Otherwise, I will not communicate with them for the rest of my life, as I said in that letter. The only reason I would ever re-engage them is if I have an assurance from a counsellor or from a head of department that I will be treated fairly and I will be afforded the necessary facilities that one in my situation should be afforded. Taking my situation into account, my health into account, and the condition of it, and the special dietary requirements that I have being met and taken into account. when they're deciding how they're going to help me. I need access to cooking facilities. It'd be a lot cheaper than having access to a personal chef. Wouldn't it? So if I don't have access to those cooking facilities to get my bulk staple, roots, potatoes, I was doing fine on them. I was healthy. I was able to train. I was able to work in Schnitzel House 14-hour shifts. I was doing fine eating all those potatoes. White potato, sweet potato, and root, other fruits like pumpkin, butternut squash. Actually, rarely pumpkin, but butternut squash, which is a cousin, so to speak, of pumpkin. So I was having like that, beetroot as well, cooked beetroot that you buy in the backpack bag, you know the one. That stuff. I was eating tomato sauces. So I was getting my tomatoes, but rather cheaply by buying them in sauce form. I was really trying to reduce cost at that time because I had a limited budget. So I was just eating big bowls of spuds, bit of tomato sauce, a few herbs and spices. That was me. And drinking water most of the time. For a while there, I was able to afford some cacao powder to have one drink of chocolate. And I'd get a bit of honey as well. $1.40 for a container. So I wasn't able, even doing that, to have food every day most weeks. So that was the situation. And they knew, I mean, they're not silly people, guys. They know they've got to fulfill and complete college requirements. They've got to have adequate mathematics. They know €205 isn't enough to live off, to survive off when you're renting a place, because that's why housing assistance payment exists. And before that it was called rent supplement. It's nothing new. And they're supposed to prioritise the homeless and those with medical needs. And special dietary requirements are medical needs. You have to have access to cooking. Realistically. Because supply of dried fruits and stuff like that isn't always consistent and continuous. They can be sometimes hard to digest because they're dry. And so it just doesn't always work as a staple. So you have to have the potatoes. At least I do. Because other foods I'm allergic to, I react to them, I'm not healthy on them, and so I need the access to cooking facilities. So if I was living in the tropics, maybe I could survive only on fruit, and that would be beautiful, but I'm in Ireland. And so I can't do grains over long periods of time. They can't be a staple of mine. Like, if I would love them, I like the taste of rice. It's lovely. Steamed rice, nice sticky rice with a soy sauce or something. I love all the flavours. I used to be able to eat them, but I can't now. So that's the real situation I live in. So I'm pleading for help, and I have been for years now. I don't know what else they want me to do. I'm not going to worship them. They have an obligation to me. I worship Jesus Christ. They have an obligation as a fellow man to me to do right by me in this situation. So all I can do is ask for help. All I can do is say, please help me. And they're put there to help people and claim to. So help me. But I won't keep going up and down that hill being batted away like I'm a fool to return for more of the abuse. I will talk with the head of the department. And if he gave me an undertaking that I'm going to be treated fairly, then I would re-engage the services. But otherwise I wouldn't. Which is fair enough. If you're not going to be treated fairly, why would you engage the service? Blessings. Jesus is Lord. Amen.